I just finished watching the Dropout episodes 5 and 6, and there was enough content, great nuggets to talk about it, share my reactions as a startup advisor, investor, and a founder myself. And I thought this was really interesting opportunity to recap some of the things that are going on. So with my reviews here, just like my other ones, I'm going to break it down straight from an entertainment perspective. So if you haven't watched it yet, I'm just going to give you a heads up that there are heavy spoilers that we're going to be discussing. So if you haven't watched the Dropout up to season 1 up to episodes 5 and 6, then cease and desist, go watch it right now, because unless you like listening to spoilers. But I'm going to take it from a strict entertainment perspective of this series that's on Hulu. I'm watching it on Disney Plus. And then I'm going to get into sort of the business lessons that we can all learn, especially if you're working in startups today. And I've got some good ones, some great reflections. The episodes 5 and 6, I would say the theme is all about identity. And I think the show is fantastic at taking this theme and adding these scenes and just making you think. And it really does hit home, like I said, if you work in startups. But if not, it gives us a really great insight into how someone who is a narcissist, sociopath, begins to lead a company and just gets propped up, becomes a celebrity CEO, and ultimately starts unraveling. So once again, spoilers ahead, and you've been warned, spoilers ahead. I was stunned actually to see Dr. Ian Gibbons, a British scientist who ended up taking his own life, and finding out that this was true. I didn't expect it. And again, I was watching from a perspective, I know fundamentally a lot of things that happen, but this series is making me go Google a whole bunch of names and find out what happened there, because, what just wasn't something that I was interested in really diving deeply into. But as I began watching the show, and I think it's a testament to this type of show that makes me want to actually Google. And so Dr. Ian Gibbons ends up taking his own life because he's caught between a rock and a hard place, because he has a non-disclosure agreement. And by this time, Theranos is so locked down, and they're trying to protect all the secrets and prevent the fraud from coming out and for them being revealed, that he's under non-disclosure, but then he's subpoenaed. So if he goes and testifies and he lies, then he'll be committing perjury, breaking the law. But then if he tells the truth, he'll be breaking his non-disclosure, and he's worried that not only will Theranos fall apart, but the company will go after him. And so this is a pretty scary situation that he's in, and thus he resorted to taking his own life, which is very sad. This is a lawyer that they've brought in to defend Theranos, and you can't make this stuff up, but he defended Harvey Weinstein, and he's just one of these sleazeball lawyers that they bring in. And it just kind of gives you an idea as to how Theranos is fighting these legal actions and navigating this litigious situation. And it's it's fantastic casting. And there's just one scene with the lawyer where it's just highly entertaining. He's eating Cheez-Its, and it's just sleazy all around. And I've had my share of interactions with really sleazy lawyers, and wow. Again, going back, it's just like watching just a train wreck about to happen in slow motion, and you can't look away. But I just pretty much cringed and grimaced all the way through watching this. And there's this scene where, again, this interdynamic between Sunny and Elizabeth, and how dysfunctional their relationship is, and how they pretty much manipulate each other, just tons of codependency. And it's done very well between the two, very well acted and totally believable. and doubt starts to creep in, but they just can't get away from each other, and they can't stop feeding each other's dysfunctions. And I thought this was just so classic to the narcissistic tones when it comes to these management, these CEO types, C-suite types, and they play it. You just look at the samurai swords in the back, and wow, have I ever been with CEOs and people who are very narcissistic, have the traits, and this is what they have. They have weapons on their walls. So don't do that. Don't put weapons on your walls, just letting you know. All right. So this question comes up, and this is what Sonny, the boyfriend, poses to Elizabeth. He says, what if we just stopped? And then Elizabeth Holmes' character asks, and again, I don't know if this happened in real life, but I can imagine it creeping in, and she's speaking with her family, and she's just asking, what if I just stopped? What if I just stopped? And people are telling her, no, you can't. This is your company. This is your identity. And here begins the business lessons when it comes to having your identity wrapped up in your company, especially companies like Theranos or startups that are hailed and revered and just shot up to celebrity status. And there's some really interesting lines about how the reason people think that Elizabeth Holmes duped all the Silicon Valley people, men, was because it made them feel like they're the good guys. There was a line there. It was really interesting. And so it really hammers on this girl boss, female founder theme, which is a very delicate subject, but it just shows and demonstrates what can go wrong when we get into the identity politics side of startups. And I always encourage founders just to ignore that. It's great. I totally encourage female founders, minority-led founders. I myself am a minority founder, but I'm not, because there are a lot, we'll discuss it in a second. I hate to bring it up, but there's lots of Asians in Silicon Valley and startups. And so am I a minority-led founder and different things? It just gets so complicated. And this is the reason I always like to say, just take the politics, the identity politics. Politics are important, and they do have an impact in startups, and startups have an opportunity to shape the political landscape and the leadership of the company, of a country. But getting into the identity politics of it, that becomes a slippery slope. And so while I believe it's important to acknowledge this question of, this is my identity, this is who I am, what if I just stopped, and wanting to make your parents happy, and saying, the mother said, we're so proud of you. And yeah, it gets convoluted really fast. And then there's this scene, well, after Ian Gibbons commits suicide, then Sonny, in an attempt to try and get Elizabeth Holmes to be human, and thus revealing sort of the narcissistic sociopathic side, just lacking complete empathy, which is an inability to cope with shame. And so he's saying to her, you can feel sad if you want to feel sad. And she ends up just saying, you know what? Now Ian Gibbons can't testify, and just completely shuts off all the empathy, all the emotions. And it is a scary scene, actually, because this switch goes on at that very moment. And so she flips over, and, in the next coming scene, she's standing up and they're talking about the launch and everybody's super excited. And she gives this speech. And again, the full narcissism comes into play, and again, very well written, very well written. I don't know if it exactly happened this way again, but if it did, even 50% of it, wow. And she stands up and says, this is my religion. This is who I am. And she challenges everybody, like, does anybody doubt me? And then the COO, Sonny, in the foreground says, if anybody doubts Elizabeth Holmes, you can get the F out, type thing. But this is my religion. So now we're getting into full cult territory. And again, in Silicon Valley, there tends to be this cultish thing that happens where people kind of gather around these celebrity CEOs, and this cult starts to form. And I think it's extremely unhealthy. And then we get to this scene where she's cutting the ribbon on opening these wellness centers in Walgreens. And now Walgreens is being totally duped. At this point in time, they spent $140 million, 3 years of delays, and here they are. They're excited and they're cutting the ribbon. And if you think this is, just dramatized, well, take a look. This is the scene. And I found these pictures of them cutting the ribbons right there. And, there's a bit of adjustment where in this series, Elizabeth Holmes is the only one cutting it, really putting that focus on her. But here we have Walgreens and Theranos representatives cutting the ribbon. So this actually happened. And so by this time, the Elizabeth Holmes character, again, played masterfully by Amanda Seyfried, goes full megalomaniac. I am sort of like the Messiah complex. I'm saving lives. We're making a difference. This isn't just about technology anymore. This is my religion. And now, if you look at the sort of factors or the tenets of a cult and what makes a cult, it's all about the religion. It's all about centralized power. You can't get out even if you wanted to. You don't dare cross the leader. And the leader believes that they've got some messianic message, or there's this Messiah complex that's happening. And it happens in Silicon Valley. I've seen it. I've experienced it in my own companies and companies that I've worked with. Not to say that I became the cult leader, but I've been accused of being a cult leader or the way that I influence people. And wow, I can't believe I'm even sharing this, but I've seen people like search, and I've seen the search comes up, is Ed Kang a cult leader, which is fascinating. And so then here's this scene, and they've recreated it where Elizabeth Holmes is being interviewed, and she starts talking about imposter syndrome. And so founders struggle with imposter syndrome all the time, rightfully so, because a lot of times when you're doing innovative technology in terms of your venture, you're doing things that have never been done before, solving problems in a way that people have never seen before, working with people and investors, and you're pushing out this vision and you're trying to disrupt the status quo. Well, of course there's imposter syndrome, because once you start getting successful, there's no precedent. It's not like you can go to school as a startup founder and then get a degree as a lawyer, then become a lawyer and like, oh, I've joined this whole, fraternity or sorority of lawyers. And it doesn't work that way. And so, the founders that have achieved superstar status, of course, imposter syndrome. I deal with this all the time when I'm talking with founders and they've reached a certain amount of success. And do I deserve this? And especially when more experienced or older elders, investors, board members, operations people start coming in, because you hire them to kind of start taking over and run the business like, a traditional business, then founders experience this imposter syndrome. Now, the healthy way to deal with imposter syndrome is to gain some self-awareness and have enough self-awareness where you have an appropriate self-concept where you do doubt yourself. So you go get help. So you actually ask your advisors and you ask for coaches and you ask for mentors and friends to come alongside you and watch for your blind spots, but not Elizabeth Holmes, because if you're dealing with those narcissistic traits and you can't regulate shame, and you're so scared of shame, and you're so scared to experience that and to explore your weaknesses, and you don't want to appear weak because you're worried that people aren't going to see you as successful, and the entire veneer, this mask that you wear, is going to crack apart. Well, these individuals deal with imposter syndrome in the most inappropriate ways. And the problem with wearing a mask is that typically these masks don't have eye holes and you can't see your own mask. You just wear it and you just hope that other people see what you're trying to project. And if you don't regulate the fear, the stress response that comes from imposter syndrome, well, this can get really dicey. And so it's just a tale of caution for founders. Prepare early, especially if you are working in an area where you do need to cast vision. You do need to be an inspirational leader. Imposter syndrome. And so then this weird, really weird, creepy, again, done so well, this creepy party scene where everybody's wearing Elizabeth Holmes masks and they cut out the eyeballs to have kind of these vacuous. Like if I walked into a room and somebody decided it was a good idea to put on a mask of my face, I would freak out. Like I'd literally, I would have to stop and say, what have I done wrong? And it just would not even be funny. But here, the Elizabeth Holmes character, she's just drinking it up. And again, I don't know if that actually happened. This scene actually happens in real life, but in the show, wow. And she thinks it's so great, this adulation. They write a song for her, and we'll get into this character in a moment. And it's just so creepy. And then to top it all off, there's a scene between her and her boyfriend Sonny where he starts wearing the mask and they're dancing around and she starts wearing the mask. I think she started wearing the mask. I can't remember. It was like watching horror, and she's wearing her own mask. Doesn't get stranger than that. But again, testament to how well done the show is. And so here things are going to start to unravel. So this is, it's just, I won't go into details, but let's just say, these young people are getting hired in the company and they got positions of influence. And there's this really fascinating power dynamic that happens, people trying to do the right thing, and then people trying to protect themselves. And all parties think they're doing the right thing. So you've got older individuals going, I have a chance to actually do something good and I'm doing the right thing. And then you have the younger people going, I need to do the right thing and blow the whistle and pull the plug on this whole thing. So then here's where these real life individuals, and I just start tracking them down. And these are the people who work for Theranos, and they start blowing the whistle. And again, great casting. And, just pointing out, we've got Erica and Edmund on the right side, and leave it to the Asians to start taking down the startup there. So again, just pointing out, and I'm being facetious about it, but I'm pointing out, like, again, these are minorities and it's great, and bringing females in and what have you, but once we get into the identities of it could get pretty dicey and convoluted. But these young individuals, they're trying to do the right thing, and then later on in real life they end up testifying. And and then Erica Chung here actually goes on to start an organization for have to do with ethics in tech, which I think is fantastic, really making a difference there. And so now we get back to the narcissism, and this is where during the series, great examples of gaslighting. And that's where I think that there's unintentional gaslighting where founders, startup leaders get insecure and they kind of throw out a word salad and they try to make things technical. But then there's intentional and this diabolical, malicious gaslighting that Elizabeth Holmes gets into. And there's this one line in there that really stood out for me where she's telling the young whistleblower, to be whistleblower, you have no idea what you're talking about. And just these things are complicated, etc. And just everybody uses gaslighting in this. And that's when they say things to make the other person feel kind of stupid or question their own reality, to the point where is this really true? No way. And then some people say, no, Elizabeth Holmes would never do that. She'd never fake things. She'd never be a fraud. And it's just constant gaslighting that's happening. And I think it's important for all young founders to ensure that you don't get into the habit of gaslighting. At the same time, for anybody working in tech to see gaslighting coming a mile away. I remember when I was first training to be an executive coach, my trainer who certified me told me to read this book, Snakes in Suits, one of the first books he told me to read, to give me an idea of when you're coaching at the executive level ranks, how you can have sociopaths, psychopaths, narcissists, like megalomaniacs, the dark triad, if you will, appear in suits, and it's accepted in the business community quite a bit. And so here we have, which is interesting enough, a female founder who she wants to be supported, and she's a hero, and she's telling people during that interview, if you're a female, don't let people tell you what you can't do, etc. And at the same time, she ends up using the very same techniques that, other startup leaders or people in power and authority tend to use. And it's just very cringy. And I don't know how much we're equipped to recognize it, what real gaslighting is, the intentionally evil kind. And well, good skill to learn. Let me point it that way. And so I found this other picture here. Now you can just imagine Elizabeth Holmes and the way, if you just look at her body language and the way she's projecting herself with the voice and everything like that, just how much she would hit home and say, you just have no idea what you're talking about. Let me explain it to you. Oh, there. You simple-minded, you can't figure out. Let me explain you have no idea what you're talking about, and get people to start to become distorted in their reality or start to question their own reality. And then that's what happens. These narcissistic individuals use this technique to keep people off balance. And so again, masterfully done. They keep cutting back and forth to her shooting this commercial, and I just I looked at this and I said, nah, this has to be so dramatized and embellished for entertainment value. Like, really, they did it that way. And then I looked it up, and pow, it's just, right there. Like, I don't know how individuals and someone had to have like been watching this going, this is just seems really creepy. But the way they have her eyes lit makes her look reptilian, and all these things. And all I gotta say is wow. So that's episodes 5 and 6. I can't remember how many episodes there are, but pretty much everything's come crashing down. We know what's happening. And so at this moment in time, you're not surprised as to where Theranos is going. But I think the series does a really good job in making you just part of you hoping that there's a redemptive arc somewhere. There isn't. Spoiler alert, if you paid attention to the court case, the defense that Elizabeth Holmes puts up is not not anywhere close to anything redemptive for her. So that's sad. But who knows, because I do have quite a bit of sympathy for this character, especially the way they portrayed it in this series. Let's keep watching and find out. Maybe I'll do one closer to the end, penultimate episode, or I'll do a wrap up. But there was enough watching episodes 5 and 6 for me to warrant doing this. So I hope you're enjoying these recaps. Let me know if there's anything that you want me to cover. But again, I thought these were really good lessons about identity and being a leader and a celebrity CEO for startups, especially for us founders who are working in this industry. And all in all, a very entertaining, well acted, and I believe should win awards type series. So good for Hulu and catching it up there. And let's keep watching. I'll see you in the next video.